The night my mother-in-law stood up at Thanksgiving and pointed at my 11-year-old daughter, saying she was proud of all her grandchildren except one, she had no idea I already knew about the $300,000 trust she controlled or the $203,570 that had quietly vanished from it. I am Rowan Whitaker, a trust litigation attorney in Pennsylvania, and that was the night my husband stopped protecting his mother and started protecting our child. And before that year was over, we had taken her to court, removed her as trustee, and forced her to return every dollar. The fireplace clicked on just as Judith Whitaker lifted her glass. It was late November in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, the kind of cold that makes old houses creak like they are remembering something. The dining room smelled like sage stuffing and roasted turkey. The polished mahogany table set with the china Judith only brought out twice a year. Thanksgiving had always been her holiday, her stage. I was halfway through passing the cranberry sauce when she tapped her fork gently against her wine glass. The small, deliberate sound cut through the low hum of conversation. She stood slowly, smoothing the front of her emerald sweater. 67 years old, still perfectly styled, silver hair set in place, lipstick precise. She liked to look composed when she delivered something sharp. I felt Caleb stiffen beside me. Our daughter Leela was across the table, small shoulders tucked in, hands folded neatly in her lap, the way she always sat at her grandmother's house, careful, polite, trying not to take up space. Judith raised her glass and smiled. I am so proud of all my grandchildren, she began, voice warm and practiced. Mason grinned immediately. Chloe straightened in her chair. Vanessa leaned back, pleased, already anticipating praise for her children. Judith paused just long enough to let hope bloom. Except one. She turned her head and without hesitation pointed her glass toward Leela. The fireplace clicked again. A spoon clinked against a plate. Someone inhaled too sharply. Leela did not move at first. It took a second for the words to reach her. I saw the moment they did. Her fingers tightened around her fork. Her knuckles went pale. Her shoulders drew up like she was bracing for a wave. Judith laughed lightly, as if it were nothing. She just does not quite fit the family spirit, she added, too serious, too sensitive. Mason gave a quick, awkward chuckle that died halfway out of his mouth. Chloe stared at her plate. Vanessa did not say a word. She simply sipped her wine, eyes lowered, the way she always did when her mother aimed at someone else. Across from us, Thomas Whitaker shifted in his chair, but did not speak. He rarely did. Caleb did not laugh. He did not frown either. He simply sat very still, his jaw tightened, just slightly. I have been married to him for 13 years. I know the difference between his peacekeeping silence and the silence that means something has snapped. Leela blinked rapidly, staring at her plate like it might offer an escape hatch. She had inherited that from Caleb too, the instinct to fold inward instead of pushing back. Judith tilted her head. Do not look so wounded, sweetheart. It's just a joke. You know we tease the ones we love. I felt heat rise in my chest, not explosive heat, but the cold kind, the kind that sharpens. Golden child versus scapegoat. I have watched that pattern play out in this family since the first Christmas I attended in 2011. Vanessa could spill red wine on white carpet and it would become a story about how creative she was. Caleb could graduate at the top of his engineering program and it would become a conversation about how hard Vanessa had worked that semester. Leela looks like Caleb, quiet, observant, a little too thoughtful for Judith's taste. Judith preferred loud confidence, performance, shine. Leela has never performed for her. She cleared her throat. Grandma, I can help clear the plates if you want. Her voice was steady but small. Judith waved a dismissive hand. No, sit. Maybe next year you'll be in a better mood. Vanessa laughed under her breath. It's not that serious, Rowan, she said, glancing at me like I might be the one about to ruin something. Mum is just being mum. Just being mum. I reached under the table and placed my hand on Leela's knee, a gentle squeeze. I'm here. Across from me, Caleb's eyes were on his mother, not angry, not pleading, measuring. Judith continued, oblivious or unconcerned. Family spirit is about warmth, she said, about energy. Some of us bring that naturally. She raised her glass slightly toward Mason and Chloe. Some of us just need to try harder. The words landed heavier than the first ones. Leela swallowed. I saw her jaw tighten. She would not cry here. She had learnt that too. Tears made Judith triumphant. Caleb pushed his chair back slowly. The sound of wood scraping against hardwood was louder than it should have been. Judith stopped mid-sentence. "What are you doing, Caleb?" she asked, smile still fixed. He did not answer immediately. He reached down beside his chair and lifted a thick manila folder from his leather bag. I'd seen him pack it that morning. I knew what was inside, months of restraint compressed into paper. He placed it on the center of the table with a soft but deliberate thud. "Since we're being honest tonight, I think we should be fully honest." The room shifted. Vanessa frowned. What is that supposed to mean? Judith's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. Then it returned, thinner. "Oh, please, don't tell me you're bringing work to Thanksgiving." Caleb rested his hand flat on the folder. "It's not work, it's family." Thomas finally looked up properly. "Caleb, this is not the time." Caleb's voice remained level. When would be the right time? Judith gave a soft, incredulous laugh. "You're seriously going to make a scene because I teased your daughter?" Teased. I felt Leela's knee tremble under my hand. "He's not making a scene," I said calmly. "You're the one who chose your moment." Judith's eyes snapped at me. "I'm talking to my son, and I'm talking about my daughter." The fireplace hummed again. Outside, wind brushed against the old windows. For years, Caleb had absorbed these moments. He had smoothed them over, changed the subject, driven home in silence, told me it was easier not to escalate. I saw the weight of that history in the way he stood there now. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He simply slid the folder a few inches closer to Judith. "You said she doesn't fit the family spirit," he said. "I'd like to talk about what that spirit has actually looked like." Vanessa shifted in her seat. "Caleb, this is ridiculous." Judith leaned back, crossing her arms. "If you're going to embarrass me in my own home, at least have the decency to explain yourself." Embarrass? Caleb's expression did not change. "I'm not the one who pointed at an 11-year-old and excluded her from her own family." Leela's eyes flicked up to him then, just briefly. I saw something in that look. Surprise, maybe even relief. Judith's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're overreacting." "Maybe," Caleb said softly, "but I'm done underreacting." The words settled into the space between us. No one spoke for a long moment. The turkey sat untouched in the center of the table, steam rising slowly. The candles burned lower. Judith looked at the folder again. "What exactly do you think you're doing, Caleb?" He kept his hand on it, but did not open it yet. "Telling the truth," he said. Mason shifted uncomfortably. Chloe stared at her phone till Vanessa nudged her. Thomas cleared his throat. "Son, whatever this is, we can discuss it privately." Caleb shook his head. "It's been private for years." The weight of that sentence hung heavy. Judith's composure faltered for the first time. "I have no idea what you're implying," she said sharply. Caleb met her gaze. That's the problem. He did not elaborate. He did not lift the folder. He simply kept his hand resting on it as if the paper itself carried gravity. Leela's shoulders slowly lowered. She was watching her father now, not her grandmother. The room felt smaller than it had minutes before. No one reached for their food. The only sound was the faint ticking of the old clock in the hallway and the steady hum of the fireplace. Thanksgiving continued technically. Plates were passed, wine was poured, conversation resumed in broken fragments. But something fundamental had shifted. The warmth Judith liked to believe she controlled had drained out of the room. Caleb remained seated, the folder untouched but visible, a quiet promise in the center. And for the first time in years, he was not pretending the boat was steady.
Chapter 2. The Numbers That Didn't Add Up. The shift at that table had started months earlier, long before the folder ever touched polished wood. In April of 2024, I was standing in our kitchen in Philadelphia, rinsing coffee mugs while Caleb stood at the counter staring at his phone. It was a Tuesday, late enough that Lila had already gone upstairs to finish homework. The house was quiet in that ordinary way that feels safe. Caleb's brow was furrowed in concentration. "Did you send it?" I asked without turning around. He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Yeah," he said, "just a small amount." Small meant different things to different people. For Caleb, it meant $3,000 wired to his mother to help with a tax issue that somehow had never been properly explained. I dried my hands slowly. "I thought you said in January that we were done sending money." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I know. She said it was temporary, just to cover something until the refinance closes." Temporary. That word had funded nearly 8 years of transfers. I walked over and leaned against the counter. "Do you know how much you have sent them since 2016? I asked. He gave a tired half smile. "Please do not tell me you made a spreadsheet." Of course I made a spreadsheet. I had not intended to weaponize numbers, but I am a trust litigation attorney. Numbers are not emotional to me, they are patterns. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. "Between 2016 and now, you have transferred roughly $128,000 to your parents and Vanessa." He stared at the total at the bottom of the column. "That cannot be right." "It is." He sank into a chair. "I thought it was maybe half that." "It rarely feels big in pieces," I said. 5,000 here, 12,000 there, a few hundred for utilities, but it adds up. He was quiet for a long moment. "I just do not want them to struggle." I softened. "I know, that is not the issue. The issue is that you promised yourself you would stop letting guilt make financial decisions." He looked up at me then, eyes tired but not defensive. "She says we are family, Rowan. She says we all take care of each other." There it was, the phrase that seemed to suspend logic in that house. We are family. In my world, family does not erase fiduciary duty. It does not eliminate documentation. It does not transform someone else's assets into a shared pool. A week later, something small shifted into something larger. I was reviewing case files at my office downtown when I remembered a conversation from years earlier. Margaret Ellis, Judith's mother, had adored Lila. She called her "my bright little star." When she passed away in September of 2019, Judith told us most of the estate had been consumed by medical expenses. At the time, I had no reason to doubt her, but that afternoon, curiosity pressed harder than politeness. I accessed the public estate filings for Margaret Ellis through the Delaware County system. I did not find a trust listed as a probate asset, which was not unusual. Irrevocable trusts are often separate from probate. What I did find was a pour-over will dated June 2018. It referenced the Whitaker Family Irrevocable Trust. I read that line 3 times. I went deeper. Cross-references, filings attached to the estate, a notice of beneficiary acknowledgement dated July 2018. Beneficiary, singular, Lila Whitaker. My stomach tightened. That night, after Lila went to bed, I sat at our dining table with the laptop open between us. Caleb leaned in as I scrolled. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "Your grandmother's estate documents," I said. "There's a trust referenced here, established June 15, 2018. Whitaker Family Irrevocable Trust." He frowned. "I do not remember that." "You signed something in 2018, a beneficiary acknowledgement notice." He blinked slowly. "Mom brought papers over one Sunday afternoon. She said it was just formal notification. I signed it in the kitchen. I did not read it." "Who were the trustees?" I turned the screen toward him. Judith Whitaker and Thomas Whitaker. He sat back in his chair. How much was in it? The original funding amount was $300,000. He went very still. And the beneficiary? Lila. The word hung in the air between us. He stood up and walked to the sink, gripping the edge of the counter the way he had the night of Thanksgiving. Why would she never tell us? He said quietly. She may not have needed to, I said. Trustees are required under Pennsylvania law to provide annual accounting to beneficiaries, especially when the beneficiary is a minor and the parents are legal guardians. Did we ever get anything? I shook my head. Not that I can remember. His jaw tightened. Maybe she handled it. Maybe there was nothing to report. Maybe. I sent a formal written request the next morning, not as a lawyer, as Lila's mother, requesting a full copy of the trust document and all accountings from 2018 forward. The response came 2 days later. Everything has been handled appropriately. Do not start something you will regret. No attachment, no accounting. Caleb read the email on his phone. That's not normal, he said. No, it's not.
We hired a forensic accountant the following week. David Klein had spent 25 years tracing money through estates and corporate entities. He was methodical and calm, the kind of person who does not react until he has numbers to justify it. We gave him authorization to request financial records tied to the trust. 3 weeks later, we sat in his office as he slid a printed summary across the desk. The trust was originally funded with $300,000 in June of 2018. Based on moderate investment returns, it should have grown slightly over the following years. Instead, by March of 2024, the balance sat at $96,430. Caleb stared at the page. Where did the rest go? David tapped a highlighted section. $70,000 transferred in various increments to a personal account under Judith Whitaker between 2020 and 2022. $55,000 allocated in 2022 labeled home renovation expenses. $45,000 wired in 3 separate transactions to an account associated with Vanessa Carson's business. $33,570 in miscellaneous transfers that do not clearly align with documented trust purposes. Total withdrawn, $203,570. The room felt smaller. Were there any distributions to Lila? I asked. None that appear documented. Caleb let out a slow breath. She told us there was nothing left after medical bills. David nodded. Medical bills would have been paid through the estate before trust funding. The trust assets were separate. Caleb's hands were clasped tightly in front of him. So she used our daughter's trust to fund renovations and Vanessa's business. The documentation suggests that trust assets were used in ways that do not appear consistent with sole beneficiary interest. Caleb's voice was low. That is a polite way of saying she took it. David did not answer that directly. He did not need to. Driving home that afternoon, the city blurred past my window. Caleb kept both hands on the steering wheel, knuckles white. If she had taken from me, I would survive, he said finally. I would be angry, but I would survive. He glanced at me briefly. From Lila, that is different. Yes. He exhaled slowly. She always said we are family, that we help each other, that what is mine is theirs and what is theirs is ours. That only works when everyone consents, I said, not when someone controls the account. He gave a humorless laugh. I trusted her. I know. He shook his head slightly. I thought she might favor Vanessa emotionally. I did not think she would put it in writing. We did not tell Lila yet. She was 11. She still believed in straightforward fairness. Instead, we drafted a formal demand letter. We outlined the withdrawals. We cited the Pennsylvania Uniform Trust Act. We requested immediate accounting and repayment of misused funds plus statutory interest. Caleb insisted on signing it himself. I want her to see my name on it, he said. We sent it certified mail. The reply came quickly this time. Short, sharp. Everything was done appropriately. Do not escalate this. No explanation, no numbers, just dismissal. Caleb read it at the kitchen table, the same place he had signed that acknowledgement in 2018. He looked up at me, eyes steady now. She thinks we will back down. Will you? He did not hesitate. No. He folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. If she took from me, I would survive, he said again, voice firm. From Lila,
That is different. And that was the moment the folder began to fill. Chapter 3. The Truth at the Table. He did not open it that night in April. He waited. He waited until the air in that dining room in Bryn Mawr felt thin enough to cut. Judith was still standing at the head of the table, wine glass in hand, the faintest irritation creeping into her expression. Caleb slid the folder closer to her, but kept it closed. "You said she does not fit the family spirit," he said evenly. "Let's talk about what that spirit has actually meant." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Caleb, this is Thanksgiving." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Son, whatever issue you have, this is not appropriate dinner conversation." Caleb's voice stayed calm. "When would it be appropriate?" Judith set her glass down slowly. "If this is about money again, I am not discussing finances at the table." "It is not about my money," Caleb said. "It is about Leela's." The room tightened. Mason stopped chewing. Chloe looked up from her phone. Judith gave a short laugh. "Leela does not have money." Caleb opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper seemed louder than the fireplace. He pulled out the first page. Whitaker Family Irrevocable Trust, established June 15, 2018. Judith's smile froze. Thomas looked at the document but did not reach for it. Caleb continued. Funded with $300,000 by Margaret Ellis. He looked directly at his mother. Sole beneficiary, Leela Whitaker. Vanessa's head snapped toward me. "What are you talking about?" Caleb turned another page. Trustees listed as Judith Whitaker and Thomas Whitaker. Judith straightened. "Yes, your grandmother set up something small. We handled it. There was barely anything left after her care." Caleb did not raise his voice. "There was $300,000. Judith's eyes flashed. "That money was meant for the family." "No," Caleb said. "It was meant for Leela." Thomas finally leaned forward. "It was flexible. Margaret trusted us to use discretion." Caleb flipped to another page. Under Pennsylvania law, trustees are required to provide annual accounting to beneficiaries or their legal guardians. He looked at me briefly, then back at them. "We did not receive a single accounting from 2020 through 2023. Vanessa crossed her arms. "You are making this sound criminal." "I am stating facts," Caleb replied. Judith's voice sharpened. "We used it in her best interest." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Explain how transferring $203,570 out of that trust was in her best interest." The number landed hard. Vanessa's face flushed. "Mom helped us survive during the pandemic," she snapped. "You have no idea what we went through." Caleb did not look at her. $45,000 went to your boutique, Vanessa." Silence. Thomas cleared his throat. "Your sister was struggling. Families support each other." Caleb nodded slowly. "With their own money." Judith leaned forward now, her composure cracking. "You are tearing this family apart over numbers." Caleb's voice remained steady. "You tore it apart when you treated my daughter like she did not belong." Judith turned sharply toward Leela. "See what your mother is doing? Making everything dramatic, turning a holiday into a courtroom." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Do not put this on her," I said. Judith ignored me. "This is what happens when you marry a lawyer. Everything becomes a lawsuit." Leela's shoulders folded inward. Caleb stood abruptly. "Do not talk to my daughter like that." The room went still. It was the first time I had ever heard him speak to his mother in that tone. Not loud, not screaming, just firm. Judith stared at him. "You are being disrespectful in my home." Caleb met her gaze. "You disrespected my child in front of everyone." Thomas held up a hand. "Caleb, lower your voice." "My voice is not the problem," Caleb said quietly. He slid another document across the table. "These are the bank transfers. $70,000 to your personal account, $55,000 for home renovations, $45,000 to Vanessa's business, $33,570 in miscellaneous withdrawals. Vanessa shot up from her chair. You went through our finances. Caleb did not flinch. We went through Leela's trust. Judith's face had lost color. That money was sitting there. It was not being used. It was growing for her future, I said. Judith looked at me with open hostility now. You think you're better than us because you understand legal language? No, I said calmly. I understand accountability. Thomas leaned forward, palms flat on the table. What do you want, Caleb? Caleb did not hesitate. Full repayment of $203,570 plus interest returned to the trust. Vanessa laughed bitterly. That's insane. Caleb shook his head. What's insane is calling my daughter too sensitive while spending her inheritance. Judith's voice trembled with anger. Inheritance! That word is dramatic. Margaret wanted us to manage it wisely. Caleb held up the trust document. Wisely means documented. It means transparency. It does not mean silence. Judith's eyes flicked toward Leela again. You are scaring her. Leela's voice was barely audible. Am I in trouble? My heart broke at that. No, sweetheart, I said immediately. Caleb moved around the table and knelt beside her chair. You are not in trouble, he said softly. None of this is because of you. Judith shook her head. This is absurd. You are humiliating me over paperwork. Caleb stood up again. You humiliated her first. The air felt heavier now. The earlier laughter had evaporated entirely. Thomas spoke again, quieter this time. What are you planning to do? Caleb's eyes did not leave his mother's face. We sent a demand letter 2 weeks ago. Judith's lips parted. You what? We requested full accounting and repayment. You responded that everything was handled appropriately and told us not to escalate. Judith's face flushed. Because this should not be escalated. Caleb closed the folder slowly. If the funds are not returned in full with interest, we will file in Delaware County Court. Vanessa stared at Caleb. You would sue your own mother. Caleb's expression did not change. I would protect my daughter. Thomas pushed back in his chair. You are blowing this out of proportion. Caleb shook his head once. $203,570 is not proportionate. Judith looked around the table, searching for allies. Mason avoided her eyes. Chloe looked stunned. Vanessa looked furious. Judith turned back to Caleb. After everything we've done for you. Caleb's voice softened slightly, but did not waver. Everything you did for me does not include taking from her. Silence filled the room again. The turkey sat untouched, cooling in the center of the table. The candles burned lower. Outside, wind pressed against the windows. Judith sank back into her chair. You are choosing money over family. Caleb's head shook slowly. I am choosing my child over manipulation. No one laughed this time. No one tried to smooth it over. The power dynamic in the room had shifted in a way that could not be undone. Judith's authority had always depended on everyone else playing along. For the first time, Caleb was not playing. He gathered the papers neatly back into the folder, but left it on the table, visible. Dinner resumed in a fractured way. Plates moved mechanically. Conversation limped forward in small, irrelevant comments about weather and traffic. But the hierarchy had changed. The laughter that once filled that dining room had been replaced by something heavier, something honest. And no one at that table could pretend they had not heard every word.
Chapter 4. The Courtroom and the Cost. The drive back to Philadelphia that night was silent. Caleb kept both hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the dark stretch of highway ahead. Leela sat in the back seat, headphones on but not playing anything. I could tell by the way she stared out the window that her thoughts were louder than any music. Judith did not call the next day, or the day after that. Instead, in mid-July, her attorney sent a formal response to our demand letter.
It arrived in a thick envelope, heavy with that particular tone lawyers use when they want to sound reasonable without admitting anything. Caleb opened it at the kitchen table while I stood beside him. "They are offering $150,000, he said flatly. I scanned the page. "In exchange for a confidentiality agreement," I said, "and Judith and Thomas remain trustees." Caleb let out a quiet breath. "So she wants to return part of it and pretend none of this happened?" "That is the strategy," I said. "Minimize exposure, keep control." He folded the letter slowly. "What do you think?" I looked at him carefully. "If this were any other trustee in any other case, would you accept partial repayment and leave them in charge?" He did not hesitate. "No." "Then that is your answer." He nodded once. "We are not negotiating our daughter's integrity." We rejected the offer within 48 hours. By late August, the case was filed in the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. The complaint was straightforward: breach of fiduciary duty, failure to provide annual accounting from 2020 through 2023, misuse of trust assets not aligned with sole beneficiary interest. There was nothing theatrical about it, no dramatic accusations, just numbers, dates, signatures. Judith called Caleb the night she was served. I heard his side of the conversation from the living room. "You really did this?" she said, voice sharp even through the phone. "You left me no choice. You could have taken the settlement. It was not complete. It was generous. It was incomplete." There was a long pause. "After everything I have done for you, Caleb, this is not about me." She exhaled audibly. "You are humiliating your father. He chose to sign as trustee." She hung up. The hearing was scheduled for November 18, 2024. The courtroom was smaller than most people imagine. Beige walls, wooden benches polished by years of waiting. No dramatic music, no gasps. Judith sat at the defense table in a navy suit, posture rigid. Thomas beside her, eyes down. Vanessa was in the gallery, arms folded tightly across her chest. Caleb sat next to me, calm, focused. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Our attorney presented the timeline clearly. Trust established June 15, 2018. Sole beneficiary, Leila Whitaker. Trustees, Judith and Thomas Whitaker. No annual accounting provided for 4 consecutive years. $203,570 withdrawn from principal. Judith's attorney argued discretion. "Trustees are granted latitude," he said. "The family faced financial strain during the pandemic." The judge's voice was steady. "Latitude does not eliminate reporting requirements." There was no yelling, no gavel slamming, just questions. Were annual accountings provided? No. Were funds distributed directly to the beneficiary? No. Were withdrawals documented as necessary for the sole beneficiary's interest? The defense hesitated. Not specifically. Caleb did not look at his mother during any of it. He kept his eyes forward. I watched Judith's expression change slowly as the hearing progressed. Confidence first, then irritation, then something closer to disbelief. The judge summarized calmly. The trustees failed to provide required accounting and used trust assets in ways inconsistent with the stated sole beneficiary interest. He paused, scanning the documents one final time. The court orders repayment of $203,570 plus interest calculated at an average of 3% over the period in question, totaling $18,400. Total repayment required, $221,970. Judith's shoulders stiffened. Additionally, Judith Whitaker and Thomas Whitaker are removed as trustees effective immediately. A corporate fiduciary will be appointed to administer the Whitaker family irrevocable trust. Thomas closed his eyes briefly. The judge continued. An affidavit acknowledging breach of fiduciary duty will be filed within 30 days. A supplemental audit covering the prior 5 years will be conducted under supervision of the appointed trustee. That was it. No spectacle, no shouting. just consequence. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharper than usual. Vanessa approached Caleb first. "You really wanted to see Mom humiliated like that?" she said. Caleb's expression did not change. This was not humiliation. This was correction. She shook her head. "You destroyed this family." He looked at her evenly. "I did not take money from a child." Judith did not speak to us. She walked past with her attorney, chin lifted, eyes fixed ahead. In the days that followed, the ripples spread quietly. Pastor Daniel from their church called Caleb one evening. "I wish this could have stayed private," he said gently. Caleb's voice remained calm. "So do I." Vanessa closed her boutique website for nearly 2 months. No new posts, no promotions. Rumors circulated among the small network of customers who had once praised her resilience. At Caleb's office in King of Prussia, he requested a meeting with the CFO. "I don't want this to blindside anyone," he said. There was a family dispute involving a trust. The CFO listened carefully. "As long as there is no criminal finding and no company involvement, this is personal," he replied. "Protect your daughter. That is your priority." Caleb came home that evening lighter than I had seen him in months. "They're not worried," he told me. "They said it's a private matter." "Good," I said. He sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I didn't want it to go this far." "I know. But I also didn't want her to grow up thinking this was normal." He nodded slowly. "Accountability is not revenge," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "It's responsibility." The corporate trustee reached out in early December, introducing themselves formally, outlining procedures, promising transparent quarterly statements. For the first time since we discovered the trust, I felt something close to stability. On the drive home from court that November afternoon, Leela had been silent until we were halfway across the bridge. She leaned forward slightly from the back seat. "Dad." "Yes?" "Is something wrong with me?" The question landed heavier than any number read in that courtroom. Caleb glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "No, sweetheart, there is nothing wrong with you." She hesitated. "Then why doesn't Grandma like me?" He tightened his grip on the wheel just slightly. "Sometimes adults make choices that have nothing to do with the child in front of them. That doesn't make the child the problem." She sat back slowly. "So I'm not too sensitive?" He shook his head gently. "You are exactly who you are supposed to be." The city lights reflected softly against the windshield as we drove the rest of the way home. Justice had arrived without fireworks. It had arrived in paperwork, signatures, and a quiet sentence from a judge. And for the first time in a long time, the balance had shifted back toward our daughter.
Chapter 5: Boundaries and What They Cost. The silence after the ruling did not mean peace, it meant space. Judith called the following week. Caleb put the phone on speaker and set it on the kitchen counter. I stood beside him. Leela was upstairs, finishing a history project, unaware that another version of the same conversation was about to repeat itself. Judith's voice was calmer than I expected. "We are still family," she said. Caleb did not respond immediately. No apology, no acknowledgement of the affidavit she had signed, no mention of the $221,970 that had just been wired back under court supervision. "We can move on from this," Judith continued. "There is no reason to drag it out." "Move on," Caleb repeated quietly. "Yes, it has been handled. The money is back. Let's not keep punishing each other." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Family does not do this to children," he said. There was a sharp exhale on the other end. "You keep making it sound malicious." "It was deliberate," Caleb replied. "We made decisions for the family. You made decisions for yourselves." I could hear the old rhythm trying to reassert itself. Deflection, minimization, appeal to unity without repair. Judith lowered her voice. "Are you going to keep Leela from us forever?" Caleb glanced at me briefly. "We are keeping her safe." "That is dramatic." "No," he said. "It is consistent.
The call ended without resolution. Judith did not apologize. She did not accept responsibility. She simply tried to fold the conflict back into silence. 2 weeks later, a large package arrived on our porch. It was addressed to Leela in Judith's precise handwriting. Inside was a designer winter coat, the kind Leela would never have asked for, along with a card. Leela opened it at the kitchen table while Caleb and I watched. She unfolded the card slowly. It read, "Merry Christmas to my granddaughter. I hope this helps you shine a little brighter this year. Love, Grandma." No mention of court, no acknowledgement of harm, just a subtle correction disguised as generosity. Leela ran her fingers over the coat. "It is really nice," she said softly. I saw the conflict in her face, gratitude, confusion, loyalty tugging at her from a place she did not fully understand. Caleb crouched beside her chair. "How does it make you feel?" She hesitated, like she wants things to be normal again. He nodded. "Do you feel normal?" She looked down at the card. "Not really." I spoke gently. "You do not owe anyone gratitude for something that comes without accountability." Leela frowned slightly. "So I should not wear it?" Caleb shook his head. "This is not about the coat, it's about what comes with it." We talked quietly that evening after Leela went upstairs. "If we send it back, it escalates," Caleb said. "If we keep it and say nothing, it looks like acceptance." We sat at the kitchen table, the coat folded neatly between us. "What does distance look like?" I asked. "Not anger," he said, "just clarity." We decided not to return the coat, not to call, not to thank, not to argue, just to let silence communicate the boundary. It was not dramatic, it was deliberate. In December, Leela started seeing Dr. Angela Morris, a child psychologist in Center City. The waiting room smelled faintly of lavender. The walls were lined with framed drawings from children who had passed through before. On the second session, Dr. Morris invited Caleb and me in for a few minutes at the end. Leela has internalized a belief that she needs to adjust herself to maintain harmony, she said gently. Caleb looked down. "That's not new," he said quietly. Dr. Morris nodded. Children often mirror the coping patterns they see. On the drive home, Leela was quiet but not withdrawn. "I told Dr. Morris about the coat," she said. "And?" "She said it is okay to like something and still not like the way it was given." Caleb smiled faintly. "That sounds like her." A week later, Leela showed me a drawing she had done in session. It was a bright yellow star set against a dark blue sky. Underneath it, she had written in careful letters, "Bright things do not shrink." Margaret Ellis had once called her, "my bright little star." I felt something settle in my chest as I looked at that paper. The wound was still there, but it was no longer unnamed. Judith did not stop trying to re-enter quietly. She sent a text to Caleb in early January. "Dinner on Sunday, just us, no drama." He showed it to me. "She still thinks this is about dinner," he said. "What did you respond?" "Nothing." He locked his phone and set it face down. In mid-January, Caleb met with the corporate trustee managing Leela's reinstated trust. He came home with a folder of his own. "I want to open a separate trust for her," he said. "You do not have to compensate for what they did," I said gently. "I'm not compensating," he replied. "I'm reinforcing." We transferred $75,000 from our savings into a new trust account under independent management, transparent reporting, quarterly statements, no family trustees. He signed the documents at the same kitchen table where he had once signed that acknowledgement in 2018 without reading it. This time, he read every line. When he finished, he sat back in his chair. "I should have paid more attention back then," he said. "You trusted your mother," I said. He nodded. Trust is not the same as oversight. In February, the corporate trustee completed the supplemental audit ordered by the court. It confirmed the prior withdrawals and documented compliance moving forward. Judith did not call after that. Vanessa's boutique website quietly removed several product listings. A notice appeared that orders were temporarily paused. Then weeks passed without update. No public scandal, no dramatic fall down, just small consequences. One evening in late January, Leela came downstairs wearing the coat Judith had sent. "It's cold," she said simply. Caleb looked at her, then at me. "You look warm," he said. She nodded. "I can like it without liking everything, right?" "Yes," I said. "That's allowed." She smiled slightly and went back upstairs. Later that night, Caleb stood by the window looking out at the street. "I miss what I thought I had," he said quietly. I stepped beside him. "That's different from missing what it actually was." He exhaled. "I did not want to cut her off." "You did not cut her off. You said conditions she refused to meet." He was silent for a long moment. "Family does not mean unlimited access," he said finally. "No," I replied. "It means responsibility." The house felt calmer than it had in months, not because everything was fixed, but because the lines were visible now. We were no longer negotiating our daughter's worth, and that clarity, though painful, was steadier than any illusion we had held before.
Chapter 6: Justice and the Quiet After. In February of 2025, the final wire cleared. The corporate trustee emailed us a formal confirmation along with a detailed accounting statement. Every dollar returned. $221,970 reflected clearly in the ledger. Principal restored, interest credited, quarterly reporting schedule outlined. There was something almost anticlimactic about it. No fireworks, no apology, no dramatic confrontation. Just numbers aligning the way they should have from the beginning. Caleb opened the email at the kitchen table, the same place so many of our conversations had unfolded over the past year. "It is done," he said quietly. I sat beside him and read through the attached statement. The formatting was clean, transparent, clinical. "This is what oversight looks like," I said. He nodded. "It feels strange that something so small on paper caused something so big in life." "It was never small," I replied. Upstairs, Lila was practicing piano. The notes drifted down the hallway in uneven but determined rhythm. That sound felt more important than the ledger. A week later, the corporate trustee sent confirmation that the supplemental audit ordered by the court had been completed without further discrepancies. Documentation filed, compliance restored. The system had done what it was designed to do, quietly. Judith did not call. We heard through neighbors that she had stepped down from coordinating events at church. Officially, it was to focus on personal matters. Unofficially, people talk. They always do. Pastor Daniel sent a brief email to Caleb. "We are praying for healing in your family." Caleb read it, then closed his laptop. "Healing is not the same as pretending," he said quietly. "No," I answered. "It is the opposite." Vanessa's boutique struggled through the summer. She tried flash sales, seasonal promotions, limited releases. By late autumn, the website banner changed to a message thanking customers for their support and announcing closure at the end of the year. No one publicly linked it to the lawsuit. No headlines, no spectacle. Just the slow consequence of weak foundations. One evening in October, Caleb and I walked through our neighborhood after dinner. The air had turned crisp again, leaves crunching underfoot. "Do you ever wish we had taken the settlement?" he asked. The question surprised me. Why? Less damage, less noise, maybe less distance. I considered that. And less accountability, I said, less clarity for Lila. He exhaled slowly. "I miss my mother." The honesty in his voice was unguarded. I reached for his hand. "You miss who you wanted her to be." He nodded once. "It is strange grieving someone who is still alive." "Yes," I said, "it is." Back at home, Lila was at the kitchen table finishing homework. The coat Judith had sent months earlier hung over the back of her chair. She wore it without hesitation now. It had become just a coat. "Dad," she said as we walked in, "we talked about boundaries in therapy today." Caleb smiled gently. "What did you learn?" "That boundaries are not punishments. They are rules for feeling safe."
He knelt beside her chair. "And do you feel safe?" She thought for a moment. "Yes." That word carried more weight than any court order. In November, nearly a year after that Thanksgiving dinner, we received the first annual report from the corporate trustee under the new structure. Growth was modest but steady, transparent, predictable. Caleb placed the document neatly in a file cabinet drawer. "I used to think keeping peace meant keeping everyone comfortable," he said quietly. I looked at him. "Peacekeeping is different from protection." He nodded. "I confused the two for a long time." "So did I admitted. As a lawyer, I had been trained to argue, to negotiate, to document, but none of that mattered as much as the moment in the car when Lila asked if something was wrong with her. In that moment, I was not a litigator. I was a mother. The difference changed everything. Vanessa eventually sent one more message around the holidays. "We hope to see you someday when things calm down." Caleb read it, then deleted it without responding. There was no anger in the gesture, just finality. Life did not return to what it had been. It became something quieter. We hosted Thanksgiving at our house the following year. Smaller table, fewer chairs. Lila laughed freely when she spilled gravy on the tablecloth. No one turned it into commentary. Caleb carved the turkey. I watched him from across the room, noticing how much lighter his shoulders seemed. Later that evening, as dishes soaked in the sink and Lila curled up on the couch with a book, Caleb stood beside me at the window. "Do you think she will ever understand why we did this?" he asked. I followed his gaze to our daughter. "She already does." He was quiet for a moment. "We protected her." "Yes, even if it cost something. It always costs something." He turned toward me. "Was it worth it?" I did not answer immediately. I thought about the spreadsheet from April, the courtroom in November, the coat at Christmas, the drawing that said, "Bright things do not shrink." I thought about the way Lila now spoke without flinching. "Yes," I said finally, "it was." Love does not mean unlimited access. It does not mean silence in the face of harm. It does not mean peace at any price. Sometimes it means choosing protection over comfort. Sometimes it means accepting that distance is not cruelty, it is clarity. And sometimes it means understanding that accountability is not revenge, it is responsibility. If you were in our place, would you choose forgiveness and risk the pattern repeating, or would you choose distance and protect what matters most?